Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Bennett Tchaikovsky, the accounting professor here on YouTube. I'm here with Donavan Vasquez, and we just finished part one of our video. So if you want to learn about Donovan's journey towards becoming an enrolled agent, you can obviously check that out. But the thing I wanted to talk about now with Donovan is that post becoming an enrolled agent, Donovan took several different accounting courses at Irvine Valley College with our amazing instructor there, Professor Steven Grinberg, who has many years of experience working for the Internal Revenue Service. And Donovan, so have you taken the individual business, additional business? Like what courses have you taken at IVC so far?
So I took the first business that he offered, or yeah, that he offered.
Okay.
And then I took the additional business this last semester.
So that's it. So 207A and 207B.
Yes, exactly. And then I'm taking the international one coming up.
So international tax, which is going to be accounting 219A, which is we're going to be offering that for the very first time this fall 2025.
So yeah. And Steven, I mean, he's genius.
And so, yeah, so what is it? So now that you've been practicing, right, and you're going into class, and I can only imagine that you're getting some pretty amazing tax that you're probably asking a lot of questions just because you've been exploring in the tax field. But obviously having those kind of discussions in a tax course makes it like that much better because you're bringing some of those real life things into the classroom. So, and obviously real life things in a very generic way, not to give away any of your clients' information.
I was just about to say, you got to be
we
never
mention clients specifically or anything like that. And that's something really important to remind ourselves of. But what is it that you found about like, and I can just share with you, for me, when I watched him teach, like I've taken 9 tax courses during my life, and I was an undergraduate in law school. When I went and saw Steven teach, like, and it was really, I observed him as part of like, for his department chair, I had to basically give it an evaluation. But when I saw the way he was teaching with the PowerPoint slides and then showing using the tax forms, so what is it about Steven's teaching that you've seen that is really kind of like unique? Like, what is it about his teaching tax?
You never finish the presentation in the class because there's so much communication going on.
Okay, which is awesome.
Which is a good thing. And also, he also uses Excel. I mean, not fancy Excel, you know, like he's not modeling stuff out, but you run through the questions and, you know, he's using Excel to show you the calculations. He's got this pre-prepared spread or PowerPoint.
Right.
And then he also has the forms. And then he also has a story to tell you about his experience with it.
Wow.
Which that's the best part is the experience part of it, because once again, as in the last video.
And has it changed? So has the education changed the way that you approach preparing or filing tax returns, or is it giving you an additional perspective on, like, obviously it's deepening your accounting education, but what is it done, you know, like in terms of, you know, what has that kind of done for you, like from an education standpoint?
Education standpoint, I would say the main benefit from it all, and once again, because I was already well versed in business tax, obviously not corporate to the extent that I did learn with him, but you know, all the other stuff, but the quote unquote mental models that he kind of gives you. And I took a lot of like, okay, how do you do tax research, for example? No one will ever teach this. You have to pay for Bloomberg tax, and you know that's what you think, but it's really not true. He'll pull up the actual IRC or the Internal Revenue Code and show you the code, and like, okay, it says this. So when you're doing the research, you know, okay, what's the code say? Is there some other way that it's, you know, is there exclusions? Is there, you know, does it state anywhere that it's related to any other code section, right? And so when I'm doing research, it's nice to not have to read some of the Treasury amendments, like literally the Treasury amendments, and then also not have to pay for, I mean, I never did, and it might be amazing, like the Bloomberg terminal, but, you know, it's very expensive, Bloomberg, you know, tax research or whatever. And There's some other ones that have came out recently that are, but they're, I just have read they're nowhere near the Bloomberg tax.
Right.
But if you can read the code and kind of fall down and you have your mental models that, you know, Steven's equipping you with,
Right.
and sometimes he doesn't directly state these mental models. Sometimes he does. And then also the problem solving is how I would also take a mental model is, you know, if he's working through a problem, he does it in a certain way. And you kind of see it's repetitive in how he's going after these problems. And so you try it in practical time. So instead of taking 2 hours, you know, trying to search Google, you pull up the code and you see if it references anything else or what's going on there. And then you can kind of follow this mental model or problem solving, I would say, in more complex situations. And he addresses some pretty, you know, people ask some questions and they're like, oh, hey, like, but can you do this? You know, and you'll get that a lot from your clients too, is why don't we just do this? And it's, he either explains, you know, you can't do that because, and pulls up the code and goes through it. That's a good model to have there. Or he explains, you know, it's not really defined, although one could interpret any, and once again, no one's a lawyer, but at the same time, you're interpreting tax law. You should be equipped with reading tax law.
Do you guys ever go through like revenue rulings or private letter rulings or okay?
I haven't gotten private letter rulings, but we go through IRS guidance, Treasury guidance. The Treasury guidance slash not the revenue rulings, but like, for example, there's an IRS guidance where they issue, proposed regs or regs and final regs, right? He'll reference regs. We won't dive into the document. We have a few of them. If the code doesn't satisfy them, obviously, but they're a mess. The regs that the Treasury issues are just the worst thing in the, I mean, you try reading that and you won't get.
I've got to imagine they're trying to cover like every single possible situation, and it's like,
and they just reference
through that information can be really challenging to do.
Yes, and that's where I think the application of the code and reading the code, saying, okay, how did someone else apply it? In which he says, oh, this is, you know, how you could apply it. And then using that in future events where you might run into it, run through, oh, he applied it like that. That's a reference for me now, right? Nothing, no two transactions are going to be the same. No two issues are going to be the same, but kind of going through the motions is really, really important. Like, this is a weird problem. What's the solution? And no one knows, including myself, right? And it's not like it's super easy, right? It's not easy. I mean, and he'll walk through it and you're like, wait, that makes total sense, you know? Why didn't I think of that one at first? It literally states in the code right there, that's how it's supposed to go.
Wow, that's awesome, man. And so, by the way, this is kind of on a separate topic. Like, given all the stuff that's out there, is AI already being heavily used in tax, or is it something where it could eventually, could you load up all that stuff and then start, or is it just too, like, what have you heard about artificial intelligence and doing taxes?
So I use ChatGPT a lot. I have like the premium one. I'll load up to it like the Master Tax Guide CCH, for example, just because it's clear and concise and whatnot. ChatGPT, the tax code's interesting, and I like to say that AI is, you know, the complicated tax is going to be the last thing that AI hits, because there's 100,000 ways you can file a tax return,
right?
But there's one way that's the best, and there's one way that's the worst. And ChatGPT specifically, and I've used the Gemini to analyze some cases. And that actually did work very well for analyzing the case. But if you ask it a direct question, like, I had a question for Steven, and IRS don't look into me. It's not me who's asking the question, but can an LLC after doing a 1031 exchange, reallocate their basis in the new property, even if they have no depreciable basis left in their old property.
Mhm.
AI will say yes and no, basically, because there's no clear answer anywhere. It's taking speculations that people wrote from any time. And what I figured out is AI and all the AIs do it. They'll grab onto something, and I don't know nothing about computers, but this is what I know is they'll grab onto something that it, quote unquote, believes or thinks is truth. And no matter what you tell it, it won't get away from that.
Right.
So there's been times where it said, oh yeah, you can totally do that for sure. And it'll justify itself and show you all the tax code and give you the links and whatever, but you can't do it. And I'll give it something that says it can't do it. And I'll say, oh, you're right. I'm sorry about that. Let's walk through it again. It'll walk through it and say the exact same thing it said before and just completely ignore the thing I just gave it.
Wow.
And this is 4.0 or 0.4 or whatever of ChatGPT. And you run through these more complicated things that aren't clearly defined, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble. Your clients can also get themselves in a lot of trouble. You should always tell them, never go on ChatGPT. Trust, ask me. I'm not going to charge you $1 billion unless, good for you if you are. Because it gets a lot of people in a lot of trouble.
I've also got to imagine too, right? So when I built like an AI app for like intermediate accounting for financial and managerial, but that's using like most of my videos, and all those topics, they generally are not as dynamic, meaning they're not changing year over year versus tax, which seems to be constantly evolving.
Especially right now, it's just
Especially
like psycho.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I'm assuming though the biggest problem would be, I think, for AI is you would literally have to like every year have like a mapping of the information that's in there and yank out stuff that's old. I mean, it just seems to me that it's going to be it's going to be really challenging to do it.
Really challenging. If someone cracks it, they're going to be rich.
Yeah.
But I just don't see how it's possible. But I mean, who knew that? I mean, I didn't know ChatGPT was going to be possible either. But like in that quantum computing thing, for example, I could see like the Willow chip or whatever that Google was showing. I could see that doing it.
Right.
And no, I'm not calling myself as smart as a quantum computer, but that's like the capabilities it would need to find. It would need to run all these different things. In finance, there's a certain model of projecting things. I forget the space, time, and whatever model. I don't know. It's some weird quantum model that they use it, the little quant things, right? But it's effective in getting you an answer. It's going to take you a second. And that's effectively what a quantum computer is doing. It's running all these things at the same time,
Right.
or at least what I understand. And if it can get a bunch of different ways to do something and then decide which one's the best way to do it, because that's what you do as a tax professional, is how, here's your options on how you could do this. Although the repercussions to this could be this, I think you should do this because of this. And if it can do that, that would be beneficial. But that's half the problem again. Like you're saying, the other problem is all the junk that it's pulling from.
Right.
Especially with the ruling recently where the guidance isn't the IRS guidance or the agency guidance isn't the first reference for the judges. I believe it's what was I forget the case's name, but if you're trying to be a good tax professional, you shouldn't be just going off. I mean, for a while you should, yes, like look at the agency.
No, let's be being completely honest. Like the thing about taxation is there are so many different areas of it. And if you want to see how crazy it is, just go to NYU Law School, go to their LLM program, the Masters of Law and Taxation, and look at the number of courses that are in there. It's absolutely insane. And it's like, you're not going to know. And that's, I think, you probably would agree that I think I've seen you do this before, is that if you get something that's well beyond your scope, I think you know enough now that you basically defer that to somebody else, correct?
Unless it's an opportunity that I'm willing to drop everything prior,
Right.
which isn't real life.
Yeah.
But you do get weird things that come across your desk that you do not know as well as maybe a lawyer would.
Right.
I would say a great example of this recently, and it's not tax law specifically, but everyone asked you to do it, was the BOI filings.
Okay.
Everyone's like, oh, my lawyer's charging me $6,000 to do a BOI. They said, go talk to your accountant. Of course they're saying that, you know. I did not file one for anyone else. And I said I wouldn't file one because I just didn't feel that I should even try. Now, I know that's not tax related, but it's the same way in tax. If you've never read a code section, you probably shouldn't advise someone on it
Right.
because it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's more than just X. You normally have to either watch someone else go through the motions or go through them yourselves.
Yeah.
But that's also, Steven was very good at, you know, I didn't know corporate tax and, you know, like the consolidations of corporations and whatnot, but I had it come across my desk, and it was perfect timing with what I was taking Steven's class actually. And it was the class itself with, you know, maybe a little more research, but specifically I would print out the slide decks and use them as a reference, and also, you know, the master tax guide if I needed something really detailed. But it was, you know, pretty reliable for some pretty advanced, you know, tax.
Awesome. So by the way, when you're taking Steven's classes, do you feel as though you're being trained as like a revenue agent for the IRS? Do you think he's imparting on you like, okay, this
The
is
opposite.
is this how the IRS looks at things? Or
Yes and no.
okay.
He'll say, or I don't want to throw him under the bus.
No, I don't think honestly, I don't think it is. I think it's more of like when
yeah.
I think honestly, the way that he's teaching you using like, I think honestly, one of the most challenging things about learning from a textbook is it's too far away from the forms and like the real life stuff. So I guess really it's more of a question of like the way that you're learning. I guess it sounds like you were able to take what you've been learning and then practically applying it to what you're doing in real life.
In which is already in itself pretty complicated.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, he was able to, and you ask him questions, you know, obviously generic questions, and he'll walk through them with you, and it's some in it, and I think it's good because other students also ask questions like that. And I don't know if they're running, you know, nobody says, oh, my client did this, like, you know, but you know, they'll ask a question about a specific scenario that sounds a little too specific to just be some random question.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, you know, and then next week, you know, somebody might come to you with that question or that problem. And you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what to do there. But the fact that you have all these people asking these questions, and then Steven's going through the motions, right? Keeping the motions, and he calls it thinking like a preparer. That's what he always calls it. He says, okay, so do you guys want to think, you know, on the IRS's side, when they get this, what are they looking for? Not in an auditable sense that raises flags, because that's a machine that then sends it to a person. But what are they looking for, you know, tax-wise? Like, where do you need to report things, / where could there be possible liability of not reporting something, and how to do it correctly, along with this is how you advise the client, because you can't advise the client like you're filling out the form. They're two so separate things.
Right.
I can tell you a million times over how to do something, and then you say, okay, go do it, and I could be a chicken with my head cut off. But the fact that he says, okay, let's think like a preparer, and then let's think like, you know, like an IRS agent / you know, what are they looking at and how do they look at it?
Right.
And he normally references the actual instructions for forms,
Right.
which I find helpful as well. That, you know, myself, I used the instructions when I first started because I didn't know how to do the forms.
Right.
And that's when he kind of goes into, you know, maybe they'll look into this, maybe they don't really care about this, but it also shows up here, so you should make sure that this is here.
Right.
Because I think there's like 4,700 IRS forms or something like that. I don't know how many forms there are, but
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's there. It's the
yes,
IRS.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, so far it seems like he knows every single one at the back of its hand, and
It's his knowledge is crazy.
yeah, you didn't even know the form existed, and now he's like referencing it off, its number.
So by the way,
Is,
so do you think like so going at you had passed the EA exam already prior to taking his classes?
yeah.
Do you think by taking his classes on their own, would that be significantly lessening the time that you'd need to be studying using, say, a fast forward? Like, or if you'd taken his classes first and then you say took the review course, do you think it would have been like in terms of those classes, how they're helping you prepare to become an EA? What are your thoughts on that front? Like, so say if I'm a student thinking about taking accounting 207A, 207B, I want to become an EA, I'm going to take these five, I'm going to take, the 206A, 206B, 207A, or 206A, sorry, 207A, 207B, and then the 208. And if I took all these classes and obviously getting a good background in terms of tax, like at that point, I'm assuming I would still want to take an EA review course just because the EA review course is going to be more geared towards helping me kind of prepare for, the EA exam. But what are your thoughts on that front?
Two things. One is dependent on how you learn, right?
Right.
If you can read a textbook and go do it and take it to be a great test taker. I'm not a good test taker at all, or I'm just dumb. One or the other. But I personally, if it were me, it would cut it down. And it did cut it down because I had my grandfather and I was lucky, right? That I
Yeah,
had my grandfather. But for other people who don't have a grandfather who's teaching them tax, yeah, it would cut it down extremely significantly. And it also probably keep you motivated all the way.
right,
As there's a lot of people who take the first test and then just kind of just stop. If you're in a course and he doesn't dump homework on you or anything, right? Like you don't get
right,
packets of homework or whatever. Like you go to class, and so it's a longer class, but it doesn't really feel that long because you're involved in communication. You're not sitting there listening to him give a lecture.
right,
And you take a test on the stuff you take, but that's it. Like it's not like you're getting dumped with work.
right,
Instead, you should go out to your review thing and run through the practice problems. When you run into an issue on the practice problems, the next week in class, you can ask the question and get a really good, you're not going to miss that question again,
right.
which would significantly cut it down because you can't do that with just a review course. And
Right.
IVC is basically free, correct?
Or $46 a unit, right? So
Yeah.
if you're a California resident, it's probably the best deal. I think obviously in California, there's a lot of very expensive things, right? And one of the things that is not as expensive is taking courses at a California community college. I mean, and by the way, I'm assuming that as an E, one of the things we did not talk about as an enrolled agent, you're required, I think, to do 72 hours of continuing ed every 3 years. And I'm assuming that these courses that you take would count towards that continuing ed, correct?
I think they would. I meant to ask Steven that. So maybe he can watch
I know they do
answer.
for the CPA, for becoming a California CPA. I know that they do qualify as it's basically for every semester hour, it's like 15 hours, right? So for every unit, it's like 15 hours. So
Yeah,
if you
which
were
would
to
be
take,
a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, it's like 45 hours, but if you think about it though, if I'm in a 3-unit class over 16, it's like 48 hours. I mean, it's like 48 hours. So that's how that kind of works out.
Yeah, and also with the EA, there's a yearly requirement of that 72 that you have to submit to when you renew your P10.
But I don't think is it 72 I thought it was 72 every 3 years.
It's 72 every 3 years, but every year you need it like
At least 20
22 or something. Yeah.
Oh, so you just go to one of those continuing education providers and then And which one have you used for the EA? Do you use CPE Depot or what do you use for that?
Well, I like to actually learn it,
Right.
which is unique, and I've tried a bunch of them, so I actually like the reading of it, not the videos for stuff like that. Very specifically, my PES CPE. I really, 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 really like their book. It's like the only book I can actually do.
So what is it called? My Best CPE?
My so MY and then PES. So my PES
Let me pull this up.
CPE. Now it's expensive. I'm gonna say it right off the bat, but and it's probably it's more expensive than Steven's class, right? But if you have an issue, let's say with a client, and you want to understand a topic really well, I'll just buy a course because you're most likely going to make more. Your knowledge is power in something like this, and the client's probably going to basically pay for that in a sense for their fees to you. So if you click shop for CPE and all PES CPE courses, and they have a lot of interesting stuff too. All our CPE. Oh wait, no, not by category, but yeah. All.
All
Yep.
CPE.
So interesting is it's a CPA specific, although if you take the tax ones, it obviously is EA as well. But they have a lot of helpful stuff that's not just CPE too. It all counts as CPE if you're a CPA. Some of it doesn't count if you're an EA. But clients normally ask you to do things that, you don't have to be a CPA to do, but it's also not something that is CPE counted towards your EA every year. Like,
And you really, and so in doing these classes, you really like the quality of the CPE, right?
yes.
Yeah.
I have large stack of their books. Like here, I'll show you right now really quickly. This is their LLC or partnership tax.
Wow.
But it's everything. I mean, if you read the entire thing and took the exams, each one's I think 18 or 20 or 30 hours, something like that.
Wow.
But like you got it.
Nice.
And it's not jargony, crappy, whatever. That's why it's so thick, is it's really going through. Now, once again, it depends what type of learner you are. If you need to ask someone questions, which normally I would say is AI, but AI just keeps getting things wrong that I don't really feel comfortable running through it with AI. But like someone like Steven, if you were also taking, for example, just trying to get smarter in a certain topic, you buy a course like that. And if it doesn't fully cover something, you bring the question to Steven,
right,
and you get your answer. But if you need the question and answer, then obviously it would be different for you. And learning wise, obviously you'd probably be better off with some sort of video or a class.
Cool, man. I do. Well, look, man, I thank you so much for your time today, and I'm going to go ahead and end this. But Donovan, thank you again for sharing your experiences. And if you're looking to have your well, I'm not going to advertise your tax services, but I'm sure you.
I'm a little busy.
Yeah, a little bit busy right now. So, but anyways, Donovan, thank you again, and we will see you soon.